Yeah.
The first team up, the Sydney Roosters, which we will come with a big caution sign, this could be a big one. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to the Sydney Roosters. Again, guys, for the YouTube viewers, we'll have the slides up where we'll just mention some of the questions that we will run through this episode, and some couple of nice pictures to go along with it. Straight up the hooker role, and one player that, look, and I will quickly, I was supposed to say this at the start of the episode. We will be doing a second episode this week, guys, probably dropping on Thursday, a shorter one, but it will be our teams reveal number 2. We did say when we did our teams reveal number 1 that we weren't going to be one of those pages that just smash you with team reveals, but I have been inundated with messages, I'm not going to lie, about what's our teams doing. And to be honest with you guys, me and Jesse spoke about it. Our teams have changed quite a lot already. So it's probably worth going over. There's a lot of things that have already happened in the preseason for teams and stuff. So I think it'll be a very interesting episode. So guys, once you listen to this one, very, very soon after this one, in a day or so, you will be seeing what our teams are looking like a few weeks out from the actual season. And I think it's a perfect time with trials starting next week as well. But one player, a little bit of a spoiler alert, that may feature in both of our teams, or at least one of our teams, is Brandon Smith. Can you talk to us about Brandon Smith, Jesse? Where are you at with him?
I'm in two minds with Brandon Smith, man. Obviously, everyone plays this roulette with him every year, and we play the roulette with the Roosters every year. I'm a Roosters boy personally. I've been dealing with it for a few years, and it's been pretty injury riddled. I very much think about the Supercoach first, to be honest, so it's not as much heartbreak. But they've got every chance to win the premiership this year. You know what I mean? And you can say it every single year, and it just doesn't seem to happen for him. So when it comes to Brandon Smith, he's always that guy. You're like, is he going to do it or is he not going to do it? What are you stopping me for?
I've done it again. I haven't gone through the first 5 games.
Oh, no, that's okay. I've got them up here, so we can get into it right now if you'd like.
Yeah,
so I'm looking at the first 5. I'll try and be a bit more prompt about this one, eh? They start off with the Broncos, Manly, Souths, Panthers, and the Bulldogs. So not the
Vegas,
nicest
baby.
run. Yeah. It's pretty rough, actually, to be fair, looking at it. Obviously, the Bulldogs game's nice, but yeah, Broncos, Manly, Souths, and Penrith, the first 4. No, it's not the nicest, but we'll just have to see what happens with those guys, man, because that Vegas game is obviously going to blow everything up, I'd imagine. That's the thing that's got me in a bit 2 minds about Brandon Smith. What's he going to get up to in Vegas?
It's dangerous.
It is dangerous. It's too. I don't know. I find his value actually quite good, and it's tricky with him because obviously he's had so many ups and downs, and you expect big things from him because of the season that he had at the Storms a few years ago. But looking at his average this year, he's priced at 471 off a 46 average. That's kind of the lowest average he's had for a fair few years now. And if that's sort of the pits that he can do and he's priced accordingly, you'd imagine there could only either be the same or upside. So for that reason, that's what's got me a bit intrigued about it. Obviously, the draw is not ideal for it. Connor Watson's back, so there's a bit of potential risk of minute rotation again, but he's never really seemed to be an 80-minute guy anyway, so it's a bit on the fence about that one. But the value's there for him if you needed to cash down from one of the gun hookers, your top 2, Grant, Marshall Kings, or even in the mid to high 500s. He's another, potentially 100k down from them. Your Brayleys and Robsons and the like. So that's a fair bit of money to find too if you've already stretched out quite thin. So I feel like you could probably average at least another 46 again this year, which it's not great for going up in the rank side of things and getting a bit more coin out of it, but it definitely helps with team building for now. Because you're probably not going to keep him forever. No one ever does keep cheese forever. Gets a bit stinky after a while. So
no one wants rotten cheese.
No.
That's for sure. One thing with Brandon Smith, I'll say this. But first of all, from a Supercoach perspective, he actually started to find some form late last year, I thought, and looked at the scores. Round 25 last year against the Eels, so decent opposition. The Eels were playing for their season at the time, 57 points. The West Tigers, round 26, he got a 90. So I'd definitely take that, especially with his price. And South Sydney round 27, that's always a bash and barge style match. A 48 as well. Now his minutes weren't fully there, but I'm not expecting that when it comes to Brandon Smith. I'm just looking at his minutes now. 68 minutes in the Para game, 79 with the Tigers, so he pretty much got through the whole game, and then 66 for South. I'm looking this year, if he can get around that 60 to 65 minute mark, I'm pretty happy with that, and I'm pretty content with him getting through enough work for me to be happy with him to start with the season with a lot of just to sort of make my side work with cash. That's the big reason I think I'm going for him, and we're looking at him at the moment because it kind of makes our side a little bit stronger overall.
A little bit.
Brandon Smith, though, for the Roosters, I just I want him to focus on hooker. Like I feel like at the Storm, you mentioned it, he was sort of mixed around a lot with these positions. And one week he was playing hooker because Harry Granton was out. But then the next week he was used as a bash and barge sort of impact forward and stuff. And it's just sort of, I think we underestimate sometimes how much that can mess a player around. Like it's really hard to go at that top quality level and be good at more than one position and train your body. But like these guys, their bodies are almost robotic in a way with like what they're trained to do and how they're trained to do it. It's hard to go in and out of stuff. So if he's got another proper full preseason under his belt here with the Roosters, seen a few photos around from the Roosters, he's looking really, really fit. I know Connor Watson will give him added pressure as well to make sure he does perform because I know the Roosters are high up on Watson and what he can bring to that club. So if he stays fit, that's another bit of competition. So the more I look into Brandon Smith, it doesn't make sense, but for mine, it does make sense in a way. It's sort of like, in theory, you're going, nah, it can't work. But then I'm thinking, no, I think the Roosters will have a good season. And then I think Brandon Smith will do a quality job in dummy half.
Sounds like a broken
Maybe
record.
I'm going crazy. Yeah.
No, like I made the same point to myself, man, when I threw him into a team and I realized how valuable that extra 100K can be. So like he's a 0.8 a minute kind of guy, you know what I mean? Like he can do it. You know, that season that he kills it at the Storm, he averaged like 68, almost 70 points.
Yeah.
That's right up there with the big dogs too. And obviously that was 1 year and the other years surrounding that, and since it's always been that 45. But there you go. Like when he's not performing at his best and he's sort of potting along, he's getting you 45. You know, that 45 could be a few ups and downs between 30 and 70 plus, you know, with those bigger games, but it's not bad. And when you're just, you know, biding time before you get Harry Grant, I don't hate it. I really don't, because he could have a few big games. Just have to see if he makes it out of Vegas, you know, gets back into the country. So, but he's looking fit, man. He's looking good. And, you know, it's the same old song and dance with the Roosters. They've got every chance to win. All they need to do is just keep a team out there and, you know, not have too many injuries and the like. But yeah, it's always this discussion every year with Brandon Smith. I think if he had the dual mid, it might be a little bit more open, and I think more people would probably be leaning towards him. But I guess with the stocks at hooker, it's not bad. I'm still tossing up put him in there. I don't think it's a bad option. But again, man, it's Brandon Smith. Everyone's been burnt by him before. You tread lightly, you know, a bit of caution there. So
yeah, unfortunately we have. So it does have that. We did mention at the start of the episode, this episode we have a lot of those caution sort of signs with it. This is definitely one of those cases. The man putting pressure on him is obviously Connor Watson at 374K. Obviously missed pretty much all of last year. Actually, I think he missed the whole of last year through injury. And I think there was a chance they could have rushed him back towards the end, but there just wasn't a risk. And I applaud the Roosters for that, letting him have a full recovery. And the additional preseason will do him the world of good. He's openly spoke already in this off season about being that impact player. That's what he's training to be, that 14 player. So at 374, there is sort of there's 2% ownership as well. It's 6% at the moment for Brandon Smith, but yeah, he's got the 2RF and hooker duel. I don't know about Connor Watson though.
I'm not super hot on Connor Watson at the Roosters anyway. At the Knights, freaking hell. Mental, but
he needs more than 20 minutes.
Well, that's the thing. Like he's a great utility, and his points per minute are fantastic, and you can put him anywhere. You know what I mean? Play him at lock, you can play him at hooker. Like he'll do a really good job for you, but he just needs the minutes. And I just don't see him getting him at the Roosters, unfortunately. So in his little specialist stints that he gets put out there for. I think he excels and kills it in his job basically that he's put out to do. But I just don't think it's a big one, and that kind of just takes him off for me. So.
Yeah, no, I agree there. Let's move on to the front row forwards. Lindsay Collins, straight up 544K, 4% ownership. So there is some temptation there by some people out there. Average last year, 53. I'm guessing that 4% are seeing how well he did last year, thinking he just continues to evolve as a player and the points continue to come. Like, if I guess for that sort of price tag, if he can get that 55 average, like, I guess another way to look at this is they're looking at ways to go outside of the Payne Haas pick, I'm guessing. Because you're not going to have Payne Haas plus a Lindsay Collins, I don't think.
That's like, a lot of coin. Too much. Yeah, big time. It's heaps of money. Yeah. But I like Lindsay Collins for a premium pick too. I think he was one of the very first teams that I made. I was like, yeah, Lindsay Collins could be on for it here. And then obviously I did a bit more looking into how many forwards the Roosters have to get through, and I thought maybe not. But I don't think he really gets a bit of a hit with his minutes. He's that guy. You know what I mean? He's a freaking monster. So he'll always get that 50 to 60 role, I think, and he'll probably do exactly what you're looking at. And very, very good. Like he's a bit of a monster out there. And the only thing I suppose, he's got Origin. There's other options. It's one of those luxury picks if you were to make one. But I can't see you having him and someone more expensive than him. That's just be reckless. So, yeah, he probably has a better year than he had last season too, realistically. But because he's only getting better, man. Just a big lurch out there, just a monster. So yeah, I reckon he has a good year. But luxury pick. If you're a big fan, I don't hate it, but wiser way to spend the coin. Because I think I'm just gonna underneath. I think you got Ruben Cotter there, right next to him, and he's a dual position. With a better start of the fixtures and a nicer run to begin with, and then Ruben Cotter obviously has his appeal as well. So, there's one immediate swap over. So that's the kind of thing that you're tossing up, whether you go for Collins or you go for the value play otherwise. But yeah, I think he's better than a few of the others priced above him. So not bad. Yeah, good bloke.
Yeah, I don't mind it. One thing I am looking at with his draw, like his last points against the Broncos was a 38. Against Manly, it was a 57, so that's nice. South Sydney, it was a 47. So a few scores there underneath of what you're probably wanting or paying his average. There, I guess the concern for mine, as you sort of mentioned, is how many front row forwards they have. Like, if you just we're going to go through them. So it's obviously Jared Rea-Hargraves, who I think will be a bench player this year. Terrell May and Spencer Leniu. There's got to be enough quality minutes, I feel like, for all four. I don't think it impacts Lindsay too much. He should still get his stock standard minutes, but that's definitely something to sort of have in the back of your mind. And then we're not even mentioning some of their second row forwards, which we'll get to, who can play in the middle as well. There is a lot of options there. And Robson, for mine's one of those coaches where he does tread carefully when it comes to all of these players, and he won't overplay them. And he'll always sort of would prefer to have less minutes and quality out of players and things like that. So that's just something to be sort of careful of. Obviously, if injuries start to happen, I'd probably say he's one of the first players I'd be looking at, because I know he can handle long minutes, he can play quality minutes, and we've seen the efforts he makes in Origin. That's the top level of our code. He obviously can do it, and he can do it for a long time. So he's definitely a look. If they lose one or two of those forwards, to be honest with you, I'm probably getting him straight in.
Yeah, no, that's fair. You see him, you're like, that's a good thing to make as well with the on the Origin stage. He's just a beast, man. He's very solid. And it's one of those things that you want out of him. Obviously, you want a bit more of that. You want a bit more in the 50s than he scored last year, because there was a fair few that are pretty consistent, 45 to 50 pointers where, you can push it up a bit higher. And, you make the same point again, just about the injury side of things. Because, again, I don't see it changing his minutes, but I think it just helps in general, a bit more, bit of confidence, a bit of stability as far as what are the actual props going to be, because I want it to be Collins and May. That's who I want starting out of the whole pack of all of them. And then I look at Terrell May, freak. I think he could probably outscore Collins, and he's 100K less than him. So that's where I would be going for it every day of the week. Yeah, he's a gun, man.
1.3 points per minute, mate. We may as well get onto May
point per
now.
minute. It's just a freaking animal.
430K as well. So he
really
was
good.
he was in rich form at the end of last year. I talked about Brandon Smith, but May was another level as well. He was one of their big players.
Yeah, that last 2 months, you could call it, thereabouts of the year, just
it's finals football 2 months early.
Well, they and that's the thing, like, they really got themselves into that position and got very lucky to make it in there too. And I put it on the back of the forwards as well. Obviously, they kind of found their stride a bit in the attacking side of things, but they just had the beast up front, man. Like, they just had a solid pack, and they kind of worked it out towards the end. And I don't see why they'd go against that. That's what got them on that late push. So, realistically, you just think stick with what you had. And they've only bolstered it with Lenu too. So I see, I don't know about Rhea Hargraves going to the bench long term. Obviously, he's suspended, so that kind of helps the cause for the other guys a little bit. But he's a bit too much of a liability for the team in general, I think. It's probably time to, thank the legend for what he's done and then slow him down a little bit and bring the guns up a bit. But and that's the thing.
He re-signed though.
Yeah, just let him just.
I don't think he do you reckon he was re-signed to play Reggie's? I don't think so. I think he has one more year in him, and he'll go out. He's hoping, and I guess the Roosters fans are hoping, a winner
with the premiership. Yeah, well, that's probably the plan for him. And then I guess just having that experience too is going to be good for him, because without him, like, you've got Collins, but then you've got a very young, also, like, Lenu's got the grand final experience coming out of a championship winning side for years and years. So you have that, but he just doesn't have that sort of age experience, that sort of leadership kind of thing out there as well. And he's a bit hot-headed. You don't want to be taking a bit more of your moral lessons off Rhea Hargraves as far as that goes, but I think he's just probably good to have him at the club, just to get everyone going a bit. So,
just with Terrell May, as we go down this list, I just want one more question for you. Currently 7% ownership, and I understand what they're looking at, the points per minute and things like that. One concern for mine is just his role he will play. We're not too sure of what it will, because let's not kid ourselves. Last year, even the back end, the Roosters were still undermanned. They still had some quality players out, and they were just slowly starting to get the troops back, but we never sort of seen them full strength. So we're not sure with what the lineup's looking like this year, what everyone's roles is. And if we're being honest, the start of last year, there was talk about May being a good player in that, but no one thought he was going to come on like he did. Like, he was a really, really good player by the end of the year, and he'll be demanding a very big contract by the end of this year. But where do you put him at Supercoach? He's 430K. So for mine, he's an awkward price, because I don't know, depending on the minutes that he plays, whether it's bench forward or starting, what's he going to be for your Supercoach team? Because I don't think you want 430K on your bench.
No. I'll give you a little spoiler. He's in my starting lineup.
Oh, look out. You're going Rooster, mate. Is the Rooster in every position?
No. There's only a handful in there. It won't be like that come round one, I can tell you that. But I like his value. But the thing is, I like the most is I like his points per minute. He goes out there, and it's just that case. Even if he gets 40 minutes with a 1.3, if he's off the bench, if he gets 40 minutes, you're still going to make that score. So I'm not super worried about him going to the bench. I'm just more so a bit hesitant on how many minutes he gets off it. Because I think he'll probably do a bit of a job with the minutes that he gets anyway. So ideally, in a perfect world, he starts. I think he's staked his claim enough to get, put into the conversation for it. I don't know how far down the pecking order he goes when you start considering how many other forwards they have to move through.
Yes.
But I feel like he's got good value there. But yeah, it's one of those positions again where if you're not starting with him, it's a bit pricey to put on your bench. So I just have to see how it looks come, trials, and who looks like they're getting the nod there. But I like him. So something to consider. Something to consider.
One player you're hot on, and then there's another player that I don't think you're as hot on, and you're going to put out the caution sign very early on again here. Spencer Leniu. I was very excited by Spencer very early on when Supercoach was picked, and he was probably one of my first picked players. 332K, 22% ownership. I think originally when they signed, everyone was thinking, awesome, he'll just be one of the starting props, because at the time, JWH hadn't re-signed, and Terrell May, I don't think, had come on the way we thought he would. He was still sort of working his way into the first grade side. So he's got there now, and he's got Jared Rodriguez-Hargreaves is now re-signed, and Mays, as we've just spoken about, Mays become a freak. It's a tough one for Lenu and Lenu owners. Like 22%, that's a lot of, especially now. So many people have already got the app in that.
Yeah,
that's a lot of owners. And I know you just want to sort of put out that be careful, because it might not be as rosy as a lot of us are thinking.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's very high. I actually think it's gone higher too, since it started as well. So obviously, yeah, the hype was there about Lenu going to the Roosters last year, and it was a very poorly kept secret about it, but I think you just sort of have to just pay a bit more attention to who else is in that forward pack, and just think realistically about where he's going to be. It's all well and good to say, Lenu's going to come in with a massive points per minute, and he's explosive and he's going to start. I think it's a very, very ambitious take that Lenu starts. I don't think he starts for a long time, to be honest.
Yeah.
I
And
think
he's
it
only
might
got
be
a
a
1
slow burn
point per
where,
minute.
yeah, and those are in small stints too, and he'll have a really hot run, and then he'll wait a bit, and then have another big hit again. So it's a new role for him. It's not like he's a starting prop in another team coming in to start again. Like, he's never really done it.
That's
Looking at the
thing
talent
here
of
I
the
don't get.
Roosters too, yeah.
When I look at this from a rugby league point of view, which is what you've always asked me to do on this podcast, you're the super coach specialist. I am the rugby league analyst, so to speak.
Yeah.
Spencer Leniu, for mine, is the best impact forward in rugby league at the moment. Like, I have him number one as a bench forward. That's not necessarily, that's not a bad thing though. I don't think he needs to start to prove himself. If I
No.
was Robson, I'd be saying to him, let Jared go out there and start the game and bash the shit out of everyone for 15 minutes. You could then come on and provide what you normally provide, and I'll give you the extra 5 or 10 minutes. But you're playing that sort of mid part of the game, because that's what you are so good at. Keep him at that.
Yeah.
He's the number one prop for mine when it's coming off the bench.
Yeah.
I know
Definitely.
he's signed and there's all that talk about it, but I'd sit back and I'd go, you know what? It's working. We're not going to change it yet. Next year, let's reassess when Jared does retire. But this year, while we do have Jared just keep to pick at and just use as our battering ram and intimidator, let's use that, because that way, that whole 80 minutes, we have an enforcer on the field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree with you on that one. Don't change what's not broken, really. You know exactly what he can do off the bench as an impact player. And if that's what the Roosters have got him in there for, which I think it's probably what they have done, because they haven't really had that come through solid. Well, they sort of have with Watson but again, he's been injured. So they've had the players there for him, but they've had just so many injuries. They can't really seem to string it together. So, he's only, like, his Panthers role was 25 to 35 minutes. That's kind of it. You put him in after the sting, the first 20 minutes done, let him just belt it out, kind of thing. I see him doing the same, but he probably does get a bit more of a minutes bump, a bit more of an incentive with a new club. But I think, yeah, it's going to be one of those things. We'll look at Lenu next year with his 30-odd minute price point with no Hargreaves, and we'll be thinking, yeah, this could be one of the best pickups of the year right now at this price. And it's just going to be a wait and see next season kind of thing. Like, it just depends on injuries again. Like, you can never write it out with this club, man. You can have 15 forwards and you might only have about 7 come the end of the year. So, yeah, I just think, yeah, with the depth they've got there, you just got to tread lightly and have a look at the other players at that 330 price point, because there are starting props that will give you a bit more. So,
I'm not the last thing on Lenu as well, for the 22% ownership out there. And I think I might still be. I'm not too sure. I'm not going to say too much on that. But if he is a bench forward and he's starting that, I wouldn't say to panic at all, because I do still think he will get slightly increased minutes this year. It's just I'll wait and see because he's still averaging 1 point per minute. I said before that's only, but that's still quite good. It's only that we spoke about Terrell May just before that, who has such a high points per minute, which is abnormal. But normally you talk about players, and it's like you go, you know what? I'll take 0.8 as like I'll get through that. 1 point per minute is still good, and if he can get 40 minutes or so, he's still definitely an option. Like he could get you an extra 50, 100K or something from his current price tag. I think a lot of these 22% is thinking it's going to be instant and it's going to be, he's going to get 50 points straight away. And that's going to be his just base. He'll just do 50 and that's what we'll get. Just be careful because I just don't know if we will get that, especially early on as Trent Robson sorts this out because we move to the second row forwards. This list is 10 players deep. So we're not going to go through all 10. But I'm telling you right now, there's at least 8 players here who are going to be used quite a lot this year. And how you fit 8 players into this lineup, because it's 2 starters. Obviously, the lock falls into this as well. Radley, the bench, and we spoke about it already. Like players like Crichton and stuff. When we dig a bit deeper, Tupanua was sort of doing it a little bit last year as well. They can play middle as well. You got your Butcher brothers as well. Like this is some talented team. So Nat Butcher, 646K, 1% ownership. I can't go there this year, and he was so consistent for the Roosters last year. I feel like I'm crazy for saying this. I actually don't have him starting or in the initial team.
You're out of your mind.
And I think I am crazy for that. But when I look at it, Wong, Crichton, Tupanua, I'd have all ahead of him if they're all fully fit, which I know is a big if with the way Crichton and Tupanua has had last year. Radley's obviously your lock. Connor Watson's going to be on the bench. We've already talked about the 2 props that will be on the bench. I think it's out of maybe... And then obviously I think Crichton or Tupanua or Wong, one of them have to drop back to the bench as well. And 2 of them have to start. I don't know. The Butcher brothers, like they're so reliable and they're such Trent Robinson players. Yeah. They'll be there somewhere. Like I just know for a fact at the end of the year, we'll look at it, their stats, they've both played 20 odd games. That's just how it happens with them.
Yeah, I reckon they'll all somehow manage.
I don't know how's it going to work.
Dude, I don't know. You look at that.
Like, I feel like when we're talking about this, we can just talk. Let's just talk about second row forwards for the Roosters as a group. Let's not individualize too many of these because it's all going to be a group.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It's a whole group. And that's the thing when you're looking at the Roosters forward pack, who do you pick? Like they have such good value. Every single player, barring Radley, who is not an option for anyone, because he's just volatile as they come. And maybe Butcher because of his price, but I still think he starts. But obviously, like he's had that year, there haven't been this luxury of, they haven't had this depth of forwards to dip into and just go, okay, we can choose 1 or 2 of these 6 to run with in just second row, and then the rest have to rotate. Tupanua was injured, Watson was injured, Crichton had his thing, Radley will at some point get suspended, probably several times. So will Rhea Hargraves. So that's kind of where this value, this depth of forwards comes into value because they do need them throughout the year because they just, they're all over the shop sometimes. But the fact that they're all the good ones that you kind of want anyway are all sub 500. You just have to wait and see who looks like they're going to be in. Obviously, looking at the ownership percentages, people think it's going to be Siwa Wong. I would have to kind of agree with them a little bit on that one. Obviously,
let's talk a bit more about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I think I guess we've got to realize as well, Supercoach is continuously growing as a game. Why Wong? The most inexperienced out of the lot, but we're saying he is, and I agree with you. I think he's the best option.
Yeah. Well, you look at the players they've got around them. Tupanua is going to be probably eased back in through the middles, I would think. He can play both places. A couple of years ago, he did really good stuff on the edge. But then again, Egan Butcher did really good stuff last year on the edge. He doesn't really deserve to drop out of that position, and neither does Nat Butcher. So it could be one of those situations where we look at all of these players And then they start off round one with both Butcher brothers and Radley. And you just go, oh, shit, everybody was wrong. But then Wong ended the year very, very good. And I think that late form is going to really help Robinson decide who he starts with, because they really did just turn into a new team when it mattered. And it was a couple of fresh faces that did it for him. You know what I mean? Like, you can just keep, replaying the same old thing every single week. And, they had those shitty losses, and there was a couple of ones in there that you're just thinking, like, what are they doing? And obviously injuries and suspensions are always a thing when it comes to this team. So Wong didn't really put a foot wrong, and neither did Terrell May. And that's why I think the hype around those two is a lot higher than the rest of the team, because they've got really good value and a lot of upside. Like, a lot of upside. Wong was really good. Like, he was averaging what? He had a fair few in the 50s, like, high 50s games towards the end, and he's topped out at 76. So, not groundbreaking results. It was against Para too. So he did start off as a bottom basement price cheapie on the way up. So he's been priced up a little bit, 462 off the back of probably a handful of late games that are quite good. But they were good for a reason, and he's priced accordingly. And I think his percent ownership is okay for it. But at the same time, like, how good's Crichton at the moment? Because a fit Angus Crichton, like, I know you can say fit, you can be a little bit cautious about where he is. He does, man. And he walks into any team, in my opinion, when he's on. So I can't see Crichton, providing everything's an even playing field for the whole team. Crichton starts over everyone. And if Egan Butcher's the one putting pressure on his position, I don't think it's even a debate where it comes down. The only reason he wasn't in that team was because kind of just lost it. But yeah, if he's on, man, he is easily, hands down, the best value in that team for second row.
The crazy thing is, for mine as well, on Crichton, if he can come back to the sort of player we all know he can be, I know it's not a Supercoach relevant point, but I have him actually on track to get back into that Blues team, because I think he's one of those players that the Blues have really missed. He has been crucial for New South Wales when he has played, and he's always been one of their best players whenever he gets to that arena. So we know how good he is, and that's what the crazy thing is as well. If we do get to Team List Tuesday, Wong's off on the bench and Crichton is starting. There's an extra about 50K there difference, so you'll save that with Crichton. There's a lot, because I've another spoiler alert. We can't have too many, but no one's going to tune into this team reveal. Wong's in my team at the moment, but I have been so keen on Crichton. Like, I actually had at a stage 2 Roosters second rows, which is another talking point we will get to. There's something about Angus Crichton and Tupanua, because I remember them both just being class when they were able to be fit and play their proper seasons for the Roosters, not last year, the year before and stuff. They were just so good.
Yeah, man.
And I just see their price tag and I'm going, it is bargain. If it can work out, this is a bargain for both.
Oh, dude, it's insane bargain. If Crichton gets in there and does what he does, he has 30 points potentially of upside.
Yeah.
Like, that's just insane. It's absurd. He'll push the 700s quickly if he's back where you want him to be. So we keep giving away these bloody spoiler alerts, but he's the only Roosters forward in my team currently.
Oh, look out.
Yeah, and I'm really preempting very, very early team lists, and I don't want to have to change my team too many more times, because I'm probably up to number 7,000 and something by now. So I'm just thinking, like, you know what, I can keep putting these guys in and that, but this is what I want to see on team lists, and this is where I'll change it. And if he's in there starting, I'm going to see that ownership go from 6% to something like 45%.
Yes.
Yeah. There's absolutely no reason not to. Yeah.
Because I'm in the 15% for Wong at the moment, but I can quickly become part of the 6% for Crichton. That's sort of where my mind's been at. Because the other upside for me is the fact that, and they don't need it, we've just spoken about it, but Crichton can play middle as well, and he started to sort of do that last year. So that is another option. Like, if there is injuries in the forward pack, Crichton can easily change up and sort of play his trade. Even if Victor Radley is suspended or whatever, which he's likely to do for about 5 to 6 weeks at some point this year, Crichton could easily, like, for mine, Crichton could develop into like a sort of a lock. sort of player. He's got sort of those sorts of skills about him, and there's obviously so much to look at and so much to talk about. We could talk about this for hours.
I think that's what people have probably done when they start looking into the second row for the Roosters. On that, I would probably think that Nat Butcher might get a bit more of a nod there, if that was the case, to try and keep him somewhere. But again, man, they've just got so many players.
It's scary
you don't want to wish it on anyone, but you sort of need a few injuries to manage it.
to balance it.
Honestly, it's just you can't keep everyone happy. Bears team's going to be
How's the
flying.
sombrero?
Hey,
how's that sombrero going over at the Roosters? Now we look at this lineup. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, I know, man. It's
the depth. Like, let me just say one more thing. If you're around Sydney, you live locally, and you see the Roosters reserve grade side is playing, go and watch them this year, because if it's full strength, it is going to be some NRL caliber players rocking up. We haven't got there yet, but even their backline is going to be a big star player missing out weekly. Halfback, talking about that, Sam Walker and Luke Keary and Sandon Smith are all available at halfback. Sam Walker's got a little bit of interest here at 5%, 610K. And I'm glad he has that, because it means we can talk about him. And I want to talk about him because
so do I.
The longer this preseason goes, the longer I'm starting to get really tempted on Sam Walker. If I'm not, I'll say this now, I'll still stick with the two big guns to start the year. I'm not saying that. But again, touch wood, we don't want it to happen. But if something was to happen to either of those players early on, people are talking about Cherry Evans, the like Moses and stuff. I'm looking at Sam Walker next in line.
Yeah, I'm pretty on for Sam Walker this season. I reckon he's going to have an excellent year. I think with the amount of returning players to him, the amount of forwards, especially considering how small the guy is, if he can just get a minute to do something really cool, he probably will. And then I think the addition of Dom Young is going to be immense for him as well, especially on the high ball. So he loves a hard ridge pass, and I think Dom Young's the only winger tall enough to catch him. So
goal kicking.
He's just got so much upside, man. And to be fair, I don't even see the reason why he was dropped last year. And whether you can put his injury down to being dropped and it's a bit harsh. It was harsh in general. Like he's done it. He did it with Flano, and he really targeted him out, and it really affected his career for it. But you can't put the blame on the youngest player in the team who is playing in the hardest position. Like, I just don't see how he can think that's the right idea twice with two different players. He come back in the last two games and he scored very well, 71-76, which is fine. But again, he wasn't doing bad himself before he got dropped. So I'll never understand that pick or that drop. And I don't understand why it was ever a thing or why it happened. But he did get injured while he was dropped and obviously missed a big chunk. Lucky it wasn't an ACL. I think it was just a strain. So he was able to come back that season.
I really felt for him in that part, because the thing that I looked back on that and thought was there was a lot of experience in that Roosters side last year that wasn't performing anywhere near what they should be performing at. And to sort of, I know he didn't take it out on Sam Walker, but in a way it kind of looked like he did, because Sam Walker was the one that was dropped. Like, no one else was dropped because of it. It was, okay, Sam Walker, it's not working. Where Sam Walker has so much upside. Like, I still see Sam Walker, once Cherry Evans retires, I have him up there with obviously Dearden. They'll just have a massive shootout in that year whenever it happens for that Queensland spot. I still think of him as that style of and quality of player. Luke Keary, for mine, hasn't been that his own self for a number of years now. And that's obviously because of the head knocks. And there's always been that sort of talk and rumors around he's one head knock away from saying that's me done. Like, I can't do it anymore. And he sort of looked like a lot last year he was playing like that as well. He was really hesitant. And I didn't think that helped Walker at all. Like, I think this preseason, Robson sits down with them both and says, Keary, you've got maximum 2 years left in the game. Like, I'd be surprised if he goes any longer. Even this year, I'd be surprised if he actually goes past this year, but he may do. Sam Walker's getting the keys to the castle. Play with him. Whatever he asks you to do, whatever he wants you to do, do it. Sam, this is your team from now on. You do what you need to do. I'll stick with you. We've got Sandon Smith sitting there in reserve grade. We know what he can do. If we need him to, I'll bring him in, but you show me what you've got. We've got a top 4 quality roster. Make sure we're in and around the top 4 throughout the year. If we're doing that, your job's safe. As soon as we drop below the top 8, that's when we have a conversation. But I'd be giving the keys to Sam Walker and going, there you go. And that's why I'm so high up on him this year for a Supercoach, because I think the Roosters are going to have a really good season. And I think Sam Walker, it's going to be Sam Walker's team.
I'd love it to be that. I don't see Robertson giving him that level of trust yet, considering he dropped him last year. So whether that was just kind of like a wake-up call for him and he really wanted him to perform, Kiri was pretty well dog shit for that period.
Yeah.
And I would have thought it would have made sense to drop him, considering the coin that he's on and the level of status that he plays at. And did nothing with it. And he didn't get punished for it at all. And neither did any of the big guys. So on that, I do feel for Sam Walker. I am a fan. I think he's probably got a very, very good future at the club. I just hope, he just gets the treatment he sort of deserves out of it, because, he's not bad. But again, they're both the half and the 5'8" there are quite small stature-wise. So they do need the forwards to kind of step up around them. And I think they've got that this year. And the strike power to really push them as well. So, yeah, 6'10", I do see a fair bit of upside. Obviously, the fixtures aren't great, but
fixtures aren't great. He hasn't averaged too badly against these teams, though. Like 59 and an 87 last year against the Broncos. He had a 59 and a 59 against Manly, and a 76 and a 24 early against South. That wasn't a great score, but the other scores, like, I know when you're comparing him to Hines and Cleary, you're going, a bit there you go. But you can't. Like, if they're out injured, I'm going for, and this is my next option. That's sort of the points that you're expecting from like Cherry Evans and stuff. And you're going to be paying an extra 150, maybe 200K for those sorts of players, where you'll get it from Sam Walker for 6'10". Yeah. And it frees up so much for you to do for maybe a better backline player, upgrading one of your second row forwards from that mid tier up to one of those expensive players who are looking like they're starting to hit the ground running. So the other thing, like, you got to think about, like, Fafita will be coming back after a few weeks and stuff. So if something does happen, you'll need to free up cash to get that sort of player in your team. You'll be left behind if you don't. So they're the options you got to look at. And there's 2% at the moment. When you look over at 5'8", that's only Luke Keary. So we've already spoken about Keary. There's 2% going in Luke Keary's basket. If I'm that 2%, I'm quickly going over and changing to Sam Walker. I just think you get more upside with Sam Walker. I don't think there should be 2% next to Keary's name.
No, not at all. I don't understand that at all. He's got so much more upside. See if he's kicking over Suwali. I imagine he will. That should be a bit more upside for him. Ideally, you get in a good attacking team, the points are going to come naturally, and they're most likely half of them are going to be out of him. So I just think his upside's too good. And again, if you're not going for that Cleary-Hines combo, Sam Walker is an excellent shout for it too, because I would be very confident to play him week in, week out if I had to. If I had him in my team instead of the Cleary-Hines combo that I've currently got sitting there, but it's probably going to change now with other news. But he would have a chip on him every week. That would just be a given. You're not going to spend 600 and not put a chip on him anyway. So, but then again, they don't have a bye for ages. Like, their bye is miles away, and providing he doesn't get injured or dropped again, which I don't think will happen, he's a very long-term play, and he could just continuously do a job for you and be quite reliable at that. So, I like the pick. I really do. I'm leaning towards it if I have to free up the cash. And then again, you make that point, if you do need to free up cash and someone does go down, he's a great way to get a few 100K if you're already on the big dogs. So, that's me.
I agree. Center wings for the Roosters, we spoke about it just before. A big name will be missing out. Obviously, we can 5 into 4 spots don't go, and I say that because Manu, Dom Young, Suali'i, Tupou, and Billy Smith, they can't all be there because there's obviously Tedesco, who we'll talk about at fullback.
Yep.
Manu is one center.
Yep.
Suali'i versus Billy Smith for mine is the competition, because I think Tupou with the experience. Robson obviously likes him. He'll be one of the wingers with Dom Young.
Mhm.
So I think it's basically just a battle out of Suoliti and Billy Smith. I think Billy Smith is a classy centre. When he gets to stay on the field, he's starting to show how good he is. You just can't keep Suoliti off because of the magic he can do. He's just one of those skilled players. Like I know you're the Roosters fan here. You can talk a bit more about it, but if I'm being brutally honest, I would actually move Tupou not on, but I'd keep Tupou in reserve grade, Suoliti to the wing, and Billy Smith to centre. I think that is the strongest Roosters backline. But I can understand why Trent Robson will have Tupou inside. Like he's been there, he's done it, he deserves that respect. He's probably going to have only another year or two in the game before he moves on, whether that's Super League or he just retires. He's done it all. He doesn't need to keep going and bash his body up. Where are you at with it? Because I feel like I don't feel like any of them are Supercoach relevant. Like we've got a question there about Joey Manu we'll get into, but just on the backline makeup, because we need to sort that out first, really, don't we? We need to wait for Team List Tuesday and think who's actually going to be here.
Yeah. I actually think the position's probably the thinnest, and considering Suoliti's not going to be there for much longer before he takes off, why wouldn't you not give it to Billy Smith and just build more around that? Because that's what's going to be in the future a bit more. Same thing with Tupou's not going to be around forever, so they don't have anyone else outside of that. So I would imagine that there's going to be some sort of relatively new acquisitions coming through later on this year for the next season to fill a void there, because they won't have a lot of options outside of that. Because like later on too, depending on how long Manu hangs around, I'd like to see him at fullback potentially. So there's all these things that can change, but I don't see Tupou going anywhere. I think he's pretty well locked in for the entire year, as usual. And to be fair, hasn't really done anything too bad to not get that spot. I think he's just getting on a little bit, and then sort of there's a bit more talent coming up around him, and they sort of want to give him a run, but they're just not super relevant, man. That's the thing for Supercoach anyway. For the club and for their chances, I would say you're probably realistically, I think they're probably going to run with Suoli and Manu as the centers, and then Dom Young and Tupou. That just makes the most sense to me. And then Billy Smith will just come in when someone goes down, which will probably happen. Can never discount that with the Roosters, as usual. So as long as he can stay fit too, because he hasn't been, he hasn't had the cleanest record ever. But again, it's patchy, man. He'll have a great game, he'll have a shit game. So if they can just string a few together, that seems to be the Roosters in general. So they're going to be struggling if they don't sort it out in the next couple of years, though, or even at the end of this year, have an idea and plan, because there's not a great deal of talent to work with outside of those guys. And even at fullback, like you've got Manu, who's the only one that I would be like, yeah, who else do you want to play at fullback? Who's going to be there next season anyway? And I think he's an unbelievable fullback, and Tedesco's only aging. So without that option, again, like where do you go from there? But we can touch on Joey Manu now, I'd say, and Dom Young too. They're both going to be the most relevant Supercoach options for the centre wing out of this team this year.
4% and 9% respectively.
Yeah.
Currently ownership.
I'm surprised Manu's not higher than Dom Young, considering there's only 12K difference in the two. And you know what Manu can do as opposed to a career year for Dom Young. Again, in a very good attacking night side, you would hope that keeps going, because his finishing is unbelievable. He's so acrobatic. That try that he scored at the end there is just the most insane try I've ever seen at the end of last season. So I pray that he comes and does the same thing again for the Roosters. But
me too.
I see him doing it too. I see the talent around the team. Like, you got to think Roosters versus Knights. Like, again, the strike pairing for the Knights was just lethal, way more lethal than the Roosters were. Because obviously Ponga was there. So it's not like he's going to the Tigers. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to be banging some tries. He's got a good shout to be up there for the try
Don't
scorers
start
of the year
rumors
kind of
here.
thing.
We're known for on-air live rumors, so don't.
Are we? Go on then. Give me a crack.
The live shows. the last few weeks on the live shows, for those who have listened to them, we've always had something to drop in. So don't start any rumors here or potential
There's no rumors
Tigers or
about it. This is
whatever.
just
So
my these are just my open thoughts about this club that just shits me so often. So, um, yeah, I think Dom Young's probably got a good shout if everything goes his way to be up there pushing for, the leading try scorer tally this season. Obviously, Manu doesn't have that in his repertoire as much as, Young will. So I can see where the ownership is on that side of things. I just think Manu's value is a bit deeper, especially around Origin time too, because he doesn't ever go anywhere and he plays fullback. And whenever that comes around, you see him, he's the most transferred in player come Origin because you just need him at fullback. He's just unbelievable. So every year he just seems to be getting better and better, I would say.
yeah, I'd
Strong
agree.
strong shout to start with him for the year too. I think if you're going to be doing that, you can just ride him out and just keep it running for the whole term if you're really, really keen on it. Because I think at 650, you're kind of getting him sort of in the middle to where I reckon he'll probably end on. I think he will go up at some point, and I reckon he'll probably go down as well. He'll just have those
Yes.
fluctuations, but I'd be very happy to buy 650 at Manu, especially come Origin when he's a lot dearer, and you can sort of jump the queue a little bit.
I'd be happy to buy him as well, but I don't think, to answer that question that is on the screen, I don't think he's the go-to premium centre wing option in the game.
No.
I still have a couple ahead of him. But the thing that I like about him and his upside is the fact that I know if Teddy does go down at some point this year, look, Teddy, he's been phenomenal the last few years, but look, sooner or later, I feel like there is an injury or something that might catch up to him, or who knows what will happen. Touch wood, we want to see a champion like that go out on his terms, but you never know. It does tend to happen, and I know Manu will switch straight to fullback, and I know that's another 10 to 15 points at least in his game, and that's when I'm going like that's ridiculous. But I do see a few ahead of him, but as you said, I don't mind the option as well. If that's sort of, because he is sort of the cheaper premium center wing as well. When we do talk about the ones that are better, there all the ones that for mine are better are more expensive. So he is sort of got that upside, the fact that he is a little bit cheaper. I have to recheck the stats. I'm actually surprised he isn't a little bit more than that. I know
Yeah.
obviously it's based off averages and stuff, but I just felt like when he was playing last year, I felt like he was racking in some really decent scores. So I was expecting to see him when the app first opened, like that 710, 730 or sort of mark. So I was actually
Well,
not
perspective,
really
man.
in my
He
plans, but
averaged less than Brian Kelly with one less
yeah,
game, which you would make it normally an easier average to attain because he didn't play as many minutes. But it's wild, isn't it, when you see that? He's quite far down the ranks. He was under Semi Velame. Obviously, his average was a bit different, didn't play as many games. Isaac Tungo, Graham, then you're in the top tier. So I think he's in there. He's in that top tier. He just hasn't been priced in there for a couple of things that he did last season. So, if he was fifth, sixth, you would see him at probably the same ownership, but he would be 100K dearer. So that's the thing. Like you can kind of get him at a discount in a way, because he will definitely go up and he'll definitely get that position. Last season he started at 801.
That's crazy.
It's huge, man. There isn't a center in the game that's 801 at the moment.
Yeah.
So as it stands,
maybe one
right
play,
now,
maybe one play with Manu here is if you don't start with him, look to get him in for that Dogs game and then go with him. Because it's a tough start, as we spoke about. That first 4 games is tough. I think points will be at a premium, so I don't think there'll be as many tries and try assists and the like. Around that Dogs mark and then continuing on into the Origin run and stuff, that's when the games generally open up a bit more. That's when someone like Joey Manu will come into his own, and that's when I'll be looking at. Hopefully, he stays around that price. Like the way I plan it, and I'm not the expert here. You are, but you can talk a bit more about this. When it comes to center wings, I like to go that one sort of around that 650 sort of K as my premium, so to speak. I know they're not premiums, but for mine, I put him in that category because I don't want to spend too much on him. And then the
premium
rest of
price.
mine I sort of have as sort of cheapy sort of players who I feel like can have some upside with some tries and stuff and quickly make a bit of cash off. I know this year that's dried up a lot. There isn't as many options in that bracket, which is very annoying. I'm realizing center wing for mine this year is the hardest it's ever been. I'm really struggling, and you'll see it in a couple of days when we reveal it. But yeah, don't panic too much if you don't start with money, is what I'm trying to say. Like, there is ways to get to him, and I think if you're putting like notes down on paper and stuff, look for at least by round 5. If the Roosters have decided how we think they're going to start and looking decent, by round 5, have Joey Manu in your team.
Yeah, I think that's fair too, because you can kind of let that price drop happen, which you expect. I reckon he drops a bit too after those first 4, especially the Panthers game. If he comes out and he's just nowhere for that game, you're going to want the Bulldogs game to be a really good bounce back for him. He might have a really ugly break even for that game, and you might be thinking, "Oh, I could probably afford to wait another week," but points will come. That's the thing. So you just got to take them as they are, because after that, they've got Newcastle and Melbourne. Probably tricky games too, but you want your big players to stand up in them, and I think Manu's kind of that guy too, depending on how the club's looking. And they didn't start off too hot last year, and that was kind of the reason. But they don't traditionally start off too hot anyway. So if they can kind of just turn that over and really put emphasis on the start of the season, as opposed to trying to claw their way back every year, which seems to be the going thing, you could see just a very, very different side. And I think he's one of those players that could probably, push forward for a very good start. But
Yeah. And the way they started last year and how much it did impact them, because they should have finished top 4 last year. Like, if we do look back at it, they should have been a top 4 side. I know they had the injuries and stuff, but for mine, the way they started sort of hindered that any hope, because they just sort of, as we spoke about earlier, from about 2 months out, they were literally playing finals football, which isn't good. You do not want that. You want to play some hard games, but you don't want to be feeling like you're literally playing for your season 2 months out when other teams are getting ready and relaxing into the finals. Like, the Roosters were already sort of shot themselves in the foot. They've got to just, for mine, they have to start early. They've got to start their run, not start their run early, but at least start on the front foot going hard this year, because Robson's always got his job there no matter what. But there'll start to be some murmurs coming out of that camp if they have a similar year to last year, I think, with this roster, like what we've looked at. And we haven't even touched on any cheapies yet, because for mine, there's not real cheapies this year because their side is so stacked. Like, I look in the back line, Lewis Murphy has come over from the Super League. A quick touch on him, 219K, so he's a cheapie, but in this back line, it's going to be hard for him to make a stand. He'll be waiting on some injuries, but he's a talent. I've heard a fair few things about him now. A couple of people have reached out to the page to say, keep an eye on this guy, and they're just scratching their head why he chose to go to the Roosters, because from what I've been told, if he chose to go to pretty much any of the bottom 9-ish sort of teams, or a majority of the bottom 4 teams, he would have had a starting spot basically guaranteed. Like, he's that good. So it's interesting. Finally, the only guy in fullback is the great James Tedesco, 700K. Now, I know a lot of people out there, it's 3% ownership, so not many people are thinking about James Tedesco. When I opened the app and looked at this,
it's rude.
I looked at it and thought the Roosters, I think, are in for a good year. The biggest criticism I have of James Tedesco last year was that he overplayed his hand. For mine, if that's your biggest criticism of a player and he got in the way, that's an easier fix than saying the guy did nothing, he didn't know what he's doing out there. Like, that is an easy fix for that sort of class player. And again, he's one of those players that as the season went on, he got better in my eyes. Like, there was a lot of people still going off at him, which I thought by the end of the year was a bit unfair. He did get a lot better. Average still 69.3 last year. And I feel like with so much unknown starting 2024 in the fullbacks, there is a lot of exciting players. There is a lot of huge upside potential, but that's the key word there, potential. We know what we're going to get from James Tedesco week in, week out. Like, I would almost go as far as saying 69 would be his lowest score. Like, that's something that I would be expecting just to sort of get out, get done sort of thing. Like, there is half a temptation there at 700K for James Tedesco.
Yeah, I think this is probably the first time you'd ever look at Tedesco and say 2% ownership. Or was it 2 or 3%? It's it's insane. And at 700K too, he has been declining every year. And I think just the emergence of other options has probably swayed people a bit more on that sort of thing. Not to say he's a bad pick at 700k. Shit, he's probably the best option at 700k, even above and below. I think like you're talking a guy who averages 100 plus. Most games a couple of years ago. Upwards of that. Anyway, 2020 he averaged 95 points. 21 he averaged 87. 22 he averaged 79, and then last year 69. So it was a pretty hefty drop on the year before, and every year since he's just been dropping that 5 to 10 point sort of thing. So going off that, you'd think he drops down into 60. I just can't see Tedesco being a 60 averaging fullback just off that current trend. If there's ever a year for a bounce back, it's probably this one. I started last year with him, and I burn a hole in my pocket pretty quick with it as well. But I'm not afraid to do it again. That's for sure.
I was going to say, I don't think you'll burn as big of a hole this year.
No, I don't think so either. If he burned his way down from 830 odd down to 700, I'd be like, that kind of sucks. But getting him at 700, I just don't see too much of a drop there. Like he did start off, scoring a couple of 50s, and then he had a pretty shit one here and there. And then obviously he sort of come good again, and then he scored over 104 times. So he's definitely still got it.
That's what I mean. Even against the first three teams he's versing this year, last year against the Broncos, they only played him once. He did get only a 34, but the Broncos were red hot last year. Yeah. Manly 71 and an 89, and South Sydney 83 and a 60. So like that's what I'm saying. Like even like it's quality opposition, but James Tedesco is a world class player. That's his bread and butter. Like this is the sort of games that these sorts of caliber of players go, all right, let's go. I know what I'm going to do. Yeah, I know what I will do and what I'll deliver at. Can you guys come to my level? That's the question. Like, the more I think about it, the more I think, especially early on with so much obviously we want to focus on the Roosters with this podcast, but just out there, everyone's got the same question marks. Let's go quickly through them. You got Turbo, which is Turbo. Like if he hits the ground, we know what he can do. But again, there is a huge question mark over Turbo this year. Remember last year, we were told he came back and he was good. He could hardly run still. Like he was not putting his foot down at all. Yeah. And if that's going to be the same this year, we're not too sure. There could be hesitation. Reece Walsh, for mine, the Broncos have lost a lot of quality players who helped Reece Walsh's game a bit last year, especially when it came to Farnworth. That could impact Reece Walsh this year. We're not too sure. And the factor of everyone will be coming for the Broncos knowing how good they are. Drinkwater, we're just not sure if Drinkwater will stay at that level. That was a huge level he went to last year. Like he's a really attacking player. Latrell, there's a question mark over Latrell, even though he's a great option, I feel like. Again, a hard start to the season. And is his body and mind right with it? We're not too sure. The other one is probably Gutho, which is Mr. Reliable once again. He's one of those players like James Tedesco where you know what you'll get with him, but will it be as high as his points it was last year? We're not too sure. That's when I look at it and go, do I gamble with the 800, 850K players or 900 sometimes, or do I just go play it safe to start with, free up an extra 200K, which would be so handy for me right now. Like I really need that. And do I just go at James Tedesco, which I go, you know what? It's not going to
It's just James Tedesco too. You got to think you got James Tedesco in your team. This is Mr. Supercoach.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah. Like
it's not going to get me rock hard.
Nice.
It's not going to get me.
That's Ponga. That's Ponga's job.
Yes.
If you had James Tedesco as your backup fullback for nearly 300K less than Ponga, you take it every day of the week. Dylan Edwards is 705.
Live trade.
You're done.
I'm going Latrell to Tedesco. Done.
Did you?
I've done it. Done.
You've been watching my been watching my team today, haven't you? I did the exact same move.
Oh my God.
You get providing he does it too, like he's 31. It's not old, he's definitely still got it, and the team is going to get better. Yeah, man. It's James Tedesco.
A healthy 31-year-old. He's a fit 31.
Oh, he's fit. He just got to stay away from the concussions, man, because they seem to rock him. But at his exact same price, you've got Dylan Edwards. So you get the consistent 60s, or do you go for 2K more the potential extra maybe 80 to 100 points in a round. Because Tedesco can do that a lot more than Edwards can do. I'm all over it. And at 3% ownership, he's a pod. When's Tedesco ever been a pod?
I'm excited again. I'm ready to go.
You're raring. I like to see that. I like to see that G up around the Roosters. Get in.
I'm like a number 8
Teddy.
spot to draft all of a sudden. I think Teddy might be there for the taking.
He's a healthy pick at 8. Ooh.
Look out. That's it on the Roosters. Any final words? The last question there was Roosters bounce back. I think we both can say we do expect the Roosters to bounce back, and it's hard to say that because they finished in the second week of finals, which most clubs would say that's a successful year. But for the Roosters' high standards, I see him going up above that. I see him as a consistent top 4 team this year. And as we said, like there's obviously the premium options for my final say on it. There is some premium options, which we know, like the Joey Marners and like, but there is some decent value there for some of those popular positions when the likes of Sam Walker, James Tedesco, your Terrell Mays and that are there. Like, have a look at things and don't just go and follow the crowd. Like, don't look at the apps, especially these new players. And I remember I used to do it probably 2 years ago now. I just go on because there was a higher percentage ownership. I was, these are the guys that must happen. Where so often than not, it's the whole crowd that watches this player get a 20 and goes, oh shit. Yeah. Then there's that 2% that they'll win the thing because they're going out and their gut feel and they've got it done. So trust your gut. Do not follow the sheep. Do not be a sheep. Off you go.
Exactly right. Get on the NRL Fantasy Stats Pro site and,
yes,
straight into it, Supercoach stats, and you're going to get all over it. You're going to find these little things and bits of point of difference there. But yeah, I just see the bounce back. I can finally see it happening this year, and I really hope it does. Anyone that's in the Roosters supporter overall pages, I'll be going for that number 1 spot this year. I finished 3rd last year in the Roosters comp.
Oh,
yeah.
Can you just stop coming on here and just gallivanting about how good you are?
I just want to see. I just want to see it happen. Get out. I just want to see him win. I just want to finally see him win. But yeah, we could probably go to the next team. It's been a hot minute on the Roosters.
Let's go.